I've been running Google Ads for e-commerce brands for the past 5 years now, and one thing I've come to realize is every single period of an incline or increase in sales leads to almost an immediate decrease in revenue or decrease in growth in general. And the first few times, that definitely got me a bit. It made me feel down. It made me feel demotivated with my e-commerce brands. But as I started to face this more and more and more frequently, I understood one thing. This is a constant repetitive process of declining sales followed by a period of inclining sales or increasing sales. And it happens regardless of the niche or the industry you are in. I mean, if we look at this e-commerce brand right here, it is a fashion e-commerce brand. Every single period of growth has led to sort of a decrease in revenue. And then there would be growth, maybe a longer period of growth where it would be 2 periods or 2 weeks of consistent growth, followed by an immediate decrease in revenue, followed by maybe some stagnation or a little bit of more increase in growth, and then another decrease in growth. It's like this cycle over and over again, which if you haven't already kind of gotten used to, it's best to understand why it happens and how to deal with it. So stick until the end if you want to figure out once and for all how to deal with these kinds of drops. But before we go into the actual ways of dealing with them, the exact steps of how I personally deal with them, let's understand a few of the main reasons why these drops even happen in the first place. First things first, you want to understand with Google Ads, it's an algorithm-based platform. It's a platform where your customers come to you. So this is not a platform like Facebook or TikTok where you're forcing your ad to land right in front of your ideal audience. So because of that, any given day, any given second even, there's gonna be a different amount of people searching for your product. I mean, if you just think about it, yesterday at this time when you're watching this video, a different number of people search for your product, whereas tomorrow at this same exact time, there might be a completely different amount of people searching for that same exact product. So with so many different constant changes, it makes sense for these fluctuations to happen on a very broad level. But in addition to that, some common reasons of fluctuations are things like new competitors entering the market, or maybe old ones improving their strategies and now they're competing with you at a greater level. Or maybe your product at this point of time has become pretty saturated and you need to find a different strategy to basically make the product sell at the same level of scale as it was selling at before. Maybe your old strategies are starting to fall apart, or maybe the new strategies you just implemented, they're just not performing, and as a result, they're actually interfering with the other campaigns you have running. There's just so many different things, including what happens in the back end. Maybe you updated your website, you improved your funnel. All these things combined can potentially lead to you getting sales or not getting sales with Google Ads. But regardless of all of these issues, what is the exact step-by-step process you can start implementing today for your own e-commerce brand so you can deal with these sales drops the right way? I mean, this step-by-step process is exactly what we're implementing here for this brand, because as you can see, followed by a very good period of growth until about the beginning of April, there has been a little bit of a decline in terms of revenue, in terms of ad spend for this e-commerce brand, and this is the process we're taking it through. So the first step of this process is, of course, acknowledging that you actually have a problem. I see so many e-commerce store owners, they just kind of disregard these drops. They just say that maybe it's the season, or maybe it's just a bad day or a bad week, and they just disregard it. But when it starts to happen on a consistent basis or on a very broad level across multiple different days, you're noticing a drop, you need to acknowledge it. That's the first step before you decide to attack it and understand what you can do to then solve it. So this is the step a lot of e-commerce store owners kind of skip over. It's important that you don't skip over and actually understand and acknowledge that there is a problem. But this brings us to step number 2, which is to basically analyze what is the real culprit behind the slowdown. Because earlier in this video, I mentioned a whole bunch of different reasons as to why your sales could be dropping. We need to pinpoint and understand what specific reason from all of these reasons is the reason here. And I like to ask myself 3 different questions to really get to that main reason as to why my sales are dropping. The first question I ask myself is, was there anything I did in the back end recently which may have caused this drop? You want to think of even a very small minuscule change you may have done which could have led to this. Even things like changing the color of your CTA button or maybe adding a timer. All these things which may seem small can make a huge impact long term. The second question I ask myself is, did we just launch a brand new ad strategy? And notice I said ad strategy, not just Google ad strategy, because even if you make a new change or even if you launch a new strategy on Facebook ads, on TikTok, Pinterest, regardless of where it is, it has the potential of directly impacting your Google Ads campaigns and your Google Ads results. So you want to understand if there is any other campaign launch or any other improvement or change in strategy you did which could ultimately change your results here. The third and final question I ask myself is, did we make any kinds of changes to our current working strategy? This means changes to the optimizations, or maybe changing the bidding strategy of one of our running campaigns, or maybe changing the bid of our performing campaign. All those things which directly impact your old previous campaigns, it can directly impact your sales as well. But these 3 main questions really helps me understand where the main issue is, what we need to do to deal with it, and which strategy we need to take in order to deal with the right issue. Because this is gonna take us to the second part of step number 2, which gives us a greater idea of how our campaigns are doing, which is looking at some of the data. Now, in order to look at this data, there's really 3 main metrics I look at to understand how my campaigns are doing. The first one is search impression share. Second one is called click share, and final one, of course, is the ROAS, return on ad spend. So the way I like to analyze my data is I start by looking at the last 7 days worth of data and I compare it to the previous 7 days, and I look at those 3 metrics. So if we do just that, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, look at first of all the search impression share, we can see in the last 7 days search impression share has fallen by almost 3%. It has gone down to about 25%. This lets me know that potentially somebody else is now taking a little bit of my search impression share, or maybe my ad quality has dropped. As a result, Google is not showing my ad to as much people as it was doing before. As a result, my search impression share has dropped. Those 2 things are the main things that you can kind of infer based on a dropping search impression share right here. Obviously, conversion value has dropped, which is going to be a direct indicator of something's not working. But in addition, our click share has increased by 2%, which potentially means that now, even though we're showing our ads to lesser number of people, the people that we are actually showing our ad to, more of them are clicking on our ad and more of them are interacting with our ad. So this potentially tells us that the CTR or any of the things that are related to the ad itself, that's not the issue. The main issue is our search impression share, which is dropping at the moment. But we also look at our ROAS and we see that it has actually increased by 8% in the last 7 days. So this kind of tells us that even though our search impression share right here is dropping, we are still showing our ads to high quality people, and the people that we are showing our ads to, they're actually more high quality because now more of those people are actually interacting with our ads, and as a result our ROAS is higher. But obviously our conversion value is dropping, so that means we're not showing our ad to enough people. So kind of what this tells me is maybe there's new competitors in the market, or there's old competitors that have improved their ad strategy. As a result, our search impression share has dropped. But the competitors which we are still competing against, maybe we're still doing better than them. As a result, our ROAS is improving. So this kind of lets me down a strategic process and funnel of basically understanding what my next step should be. But again, this can kind of depend heavily, and you need to really do some critical thinking, and maybe you can do it with your team. If you're the CEO or the CMO, have your Google Ads agency or your media buyers do this for you, which, by the way, if you're doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your e-commerce brand to the next level. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. Because this is the exact same step-by-step process we're taking our clients through to understand where they're going wrong or where the issues are. But again, this entirely depends on what these numbers are telling you. I mean, if the ROAS was dropping, that would be a direct indicator of looking into our strategies. Maybe our old strategies, they're not working anymore, and as a result, we might need to try some new strategies. Or maybe our new strategies are not working, and as a result, they're bringing down the ROAS for our old campaign, so we potentially need to shut off the new campaign. So this is kind of like a step-by-step process we're taking our accounts through, answering those 3 major questions and then looking at your data to understand what's going on here, because this is gonna directly take us to step number 3, which is gonna be either you revert back to the way it was before you made any changes. So if you made a campaign change, if you added a new campaign, if you launched something in the back end, if you made a landing page optimization, you want to revert back and go back to the way it was originally. This is why it's so important to note down all of your changes. This is kind of if you notice your ROAS is dropping and you're having some very big negative changes here, that's only when I would really revert back to it. Because if, for example, it's not too much of a negative, like here, we're actually improving our ROAS, maybe I will do the second part of step number 3, which is to just let the algorithm understand what change we made for these kinds of results right here and give it time to really understand them so that it can improve once it optimizes for these new changes or these new levels of scale we are now achieving. So step 3 is really 2 parts. The first part is just reverting back to the old change. If the changes here are very negative, it's like a negative downward spiral and it's a consistent negative spiral. Or the second part of step 3 is just to revert back to the old changes. But this kind of brings us to the final step, which is step number 4, which is just to wait and analyze. So if you reverted back, give it 7 days, 14 days, just wait and analyze the data, see how it's performing. Is it gonna go back to the previous levels? Is it gonna be better than the previous levels? Or it's just not performing at all? Because if it's not performing, then you go back to the beginning of this process, go back to step 1 and do it all over again. You basically keep on doing it over and over and give it enough time until you have fully troubleshooted the issues and it's back to the scale you want it to be at, or it's improving. But again, one thing to keep in mind is you need to let the algorithm optimize and understand what you are just doing after every single change you make. And waiting and optimizing does not mean waiting for just 4 days or 3 days. It means waiting for a week or for 2 weeks, depending on your budget. But this 4-step process is what we kind of take to deal with slowing sales when it comes to e-commerce brands. Again, if you're doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need somebody to analyze your campaigns to understand why they're slowing down, or you just want to scale to the next level. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But I want you to watch this video right here on exactly which kind of products scale the most with Google Ads, so you can put these products at the front of your Google Ads strategy, and the rest of the products which you have currently on your website, which are not selling, more as upsells and downsells.